That's the Tirconaill Tribune podcast for January the 26th here with Eamon McFadden, Declan Kerr and myself, John McAteer. Boys, we're looking at the possibility of 167,000 new jobs being created over the next 2 years as the country takes off. And at the same time, so many premises are shut down, unable to open up at the moment because they cannot get staff. There's a huge amount of recruitment campaigns going on. Mm-hmm. Where have all the original staff vanished to?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I know a lot of people in the early stages of the pandemic moved from, I suppose, their own jobs were kind of gone or gone temporarily. A lot of them got jobs within the HSE and the health service. I know around here anyway that happened, and that's maybe on a small scale, but maybe it's something that happened around the country because the staff numbers.
Yeah, but it doesn't account for the huge amount of vacancies now within, particularly the hospitality sector.
Hospitality is a big one, isn't it?
I mean, there are premises closed that cannot get staff at the moment, and they're all doing fairly high-profile recruitment. Where did those people go to?
Well, a lot of that cohort will be made up from things like students and that anyway. So like it'll be interesting to see now. Will that come back in some, because a lot of that will be just seasonal type of work anyway, I think.
Yeah, but like the students haven't gone away, you know. You know, like the students are still there, probably more so now than ever because numbers are growing all the time. But there are issues about how staff can be recruited across the whole sector, especially the private sector. There seems to be no issues in the public sector, which leads you to wonder, is this just down to wages alone? Because always the public sector, and you'll know this, Declan, having worked there a long time, public sector people are pretty well paid in comparison to the private sector.
Yeah, and as I say, some people, moved when jobs or when hospitality closed down. They did move to other jobs and didn't. Obviously, they're not going back to
remote working and different things like that.
Not going back.
But it's hard to know. Another thing I suppose is that it's going to be there's a big recruitment drive, but there's going to be a real lack of, I know that the hospitality sector are going to have struggled to find people with any experience now and qualifications in certain key roles in that. Like there's like chefs and trained managers and all this here. A lot of those have been out of maybe work for the last couple of years and have decided to look elsewhere. Yeah. How do you fill that void as well? It's a big one.
But our unemployment figures are still up over 7%. It's not huge. It was double that not that long ago. People have gone back to work. There's still probably a handful just on the PU payments there. The PUP payments they're about to be wound down pretty soon. So despite all that, we're talking about creating 167,000 jobs, yet we don't fit to seem able to recruit people for the established jobs that we now have. It's hardly immigration, is it?
Oh, that is very much. The whole world is shut down. It'd be different if there was an economy on the bounce, but there's not. This whole.
It would be too early because people were coming back home. People came back home and
furloughed and gone back and yeah.
So it's a strange one there. It's one that I'm just keeping an eye on there almost every week, because you see the number of premises, hotels and all that still shut down, and we just talk a little bit about the restrictions of the COVID restrictions now been lifted, and what that's likely to mean, and to all intents and purposes, it's going to be a very highly positive era leading up onto Easter and to St Patrick's Day. But as of yet, it's less than a week away, and things haven't changed that much, have they?
No, I suppose we're traditionally in that lull time of year for the hospitality sector anyway, and I suppose in some ways it may give them that wee bit of leeway in the lead up to the Paddy's weekend that's coming up, and then the Easter weekend and the early summer. Before these announcements for lockdowns were coming right on the cusp of when they were having these big flagship times of the year, so.
And I suppose it's going to be a job in itself, encouraging people to go out more into the hospitality sector again after nearly 2 years being conditioned to staying at home.
A phrase there the last day, and the worried well. Have you people are saying that's people who have been healthy, managed to avoid COVID and all that, but the worried well, they still don't want to go out.
It's a kind of a contradiction, really.
That is, but it's The next lockdown announcement.
And phoning around their neighbourhood just to warn them that the numbers are up again. Numbers are up in Letterkenny Hospital by 8 this week or the other week or whatever week it was. Incidentally, just as of this Wednesday evening, the numbers in hospital in Letterkenny are just 25 COVID related and just 1 in ICU. So numbers in hospital are falling dramatically as with every passing day, and we do expect that there will be a bit of an increase in infections, as the country does open, because the numbers of people out and about, and especially in Dublin, Cork, and the main cities last weekend was just huge, and it'll take off here in Donegal probably from this coming weekend on again as.
I think some are just starting to reopen now, really, aren't they? Last weekend wasn't an opportunity for them to get ready in time.
Yeah.
But how come it was an opportunity for everywhere else around the country?
I suppose maybe the like of a Dublin, you might have supply issues and so much handier
Probably.
on your, when you have your gas and all this pumped directly into your pub, you have a lot less setup to do,
And I suppose a lot of them were already the hospitality sector, the hotels were up and running anyway.
Yeah, no, then
So they didn't have that
city
issue.
pubs and that would be open till 8 o'clock in the evenings anyway, so it was a change changing the posts for them a wee bit more than anything else.
Yeah.
Well, do we see, like as COVID diminishes, do we see a return to what we would regard as normality of 2 years ago?
I don't think it's going to happen too quickly. A lot of people are going to be cautious. I know people. There's other people that will go out and just ready to go out right away. But there's a big cohort.
There's a bit of a transition yet to happen, I would think.
Yeah.
Are small businesses that bit reluctant to open in case of previous histories of having to shut down again? Is that an element in there?
I suppose you have had so many waves.
Yeah.
Probably 5 waves. So
We had 5 of those, yeah.
And the waves came with the lockdown measures too. They were more severe and then less severe and then more severe.
Yeah.
And as I say,
I don't know where we're going to get workers to fill these 167,000 jobs over the next 2 years. Given that employment rates next year are going to fall probably as low as 5%. So that is not an issue anymore.
Yeah.
But the big issues are still there. The housing, the rollout of fibre optic is shockingly slow, and the beds crisis in HSE, and all of that will go on and on and on. And I was just listening to a spat during leaders' questions in the Dáil between Mary Lou and Michael Martin, and him blaming her for lecturing him and saying that he had a much tougher upbringing in Harold's Cross. You just hope that somebody advised the camp courier to notify the emergency services, the counselling services, in case he might need their help.
Yes.
It all sounds so trivial and nonsensical, really, doesn't it? Because neither of the two of them would be short of a few bob at this stage, given that Michael Martin is in politics since 1989 probably.
Yeah.
And Mary Lou first got into politics when she won a seat in the European Parliament. Was that 2004?
Yes, they're both highly
She's
paid
only in the
positions.
Dáil since 2011 actually. It seems like a lot longer than that,
I think both of them have left their very hard times behind them a good while ago.
Maybe they think they have. But we're going to go on and look at some of the other stuff, Declan. Big weekend for you people in the Sports Stars. Tell us all about that, or what you can.
I'll tell you what I can.
Drum roll.
The 2021 Donegal Sports Star Awards are on this Friday night. Yeah, we're looking forward to now. It'll be streamed live on our social media platforms, and it's the second time that it's a virtual show. We had to make that call in November. We were initially obviously hoping to have a live function, but at that time there was a surge in numbers and infections, so we took the safe option, which is the best option in this case, and we're looking forward to it. A lot of work gone into it behind the scenes over the last couple of months, and there was a fair amount of sport last year once it got going, sort of from the middle of May onwards, and quite a lot of success between.
How many years is this for the Sports Star?
This is the 46th year.
46th year.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
And last year was a big one, because at a stage we weren't too sure whether we were going to have anything last year, and I think we decided to go virtual, and it was the best thing we ever done. We kept that link, and we're now onto our 46th year. So
yeah.
Listen, it's been
hard to imagine.
Yeah.
I remember the very first meetings up in the Mulford Inn.
Yeah.
The bingo committee was in charge of it at the time. People like Dennis Martin and Teddy Blaney, all those people, Paddy Sweeney, Ivan Greer, John McHugh, Father McSweeney. It was just going to be a very small affair.
Yeah.
It was being promoted by the bingo committee, and then it just grew and grew and grew.
Yeah.
And I suppose in the last 10 years it has grown out of all recognition.
Well, it has, yeah. Our live functions prior to the COVID was we were attracting around 600 people to to the
and
event
some of the
itself,
special
and
names.
It had grown enormously. So it has been very successful. And listen, there was people there that supported it during the very lean times, and they're still there. The likes of the Danny McDades were all, great supporters. When things were very at a low ebb. And listen, we've had a very good decade or more now. And so
you wrote a feature last week about Eamon Giles.
Yeah, he's the one person that knows ahead of the awards that he's getting. He's the Hall of Fame inductee, and 60 years in athletics. The man that started the first athletic club in the county in 1961 at 19 years of age, and 60 years later he's still as passionate as ever about athletics.
That's
still
amazing,
coaching, still coaching out down at the Rossapena there and around the country with the juveniles at competitions. And, a very deserving winner, and a special birthday coming up for him in June too as he turns 80.
Very, very good. We'll turn to something different, Eamon, along the Wild Atlantic Way, I suppose. It's a big story. Increased land. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the Wild Atlantic Camp, as a lot of people would know, you pass it go through the village there, and it sprung up in 2013, and it was based on the site of a wee former par 3 golf course that the Rorty family built many years ago, along with a wee building called known as the Red Roof locally. There was a restaurant, but that was repurposed into this campsite and glamping site and all that, with nice facilities in it for visitors coming to the area. And Creasland never really had the like of that before. So the Wild Atlantic Camp was set up by Lorcan Rorty, and it's been working away nicely, and it's been getting, was growing in both size and reputation in the last few years. But the Irish Independent travel magazine ran a readers' poll to see where was the best campsite in the country, and the Wild Atlantic Camp topped the poll.
It's a fair achievement.
A massive achievement for them, and it's that's reflected back by, I suppose, just the readers that are there over the years, and they commented on the great facilities, the good base, the great staff they have there too. And I was chatting
by the same token, we have a piece about the I think you did that piece, Eamon, about the facility in Fintown.
Oh yeah, I don't have the piece to hand here, but it was a piece that came out of the planning notices, and maybe it does sort of signal the transition and of maybe more industrial times to the tourism site. But there's a former sawmill.
I think there's
16 units
of accommodation, and then the 7 others
out of the site of a former industrial sawmill. Nestled into the hill in Fintown. A lot of people would know that as well from passing it.
A good location with hill walking and all that. And we're going to go from that story to hill walking access, because the INHFA, they're seeking clarity on hill walking access, and they've raised major concerns about public access and access and the hill walking, with a warning that if it's not addressed, it's going to be a very difficult time for farmers in Donegal this summer. Their vice president is Phil Malloy, well known around Fintown. He has said that over the last year there has been a major increase in the number of people accessing farmers' hills, and this in turn has led to a significant increase in the numbers of farmers contacting their office, distressed and frustrated by some hill walkers showing scant regard for them and their property. And this is going to become a big issue, because as hill walking and hiking becomes more and more popular, the legislation around hill walking and access to what is effectively private property is probably like years behind where it should be.
It's problematic every year, you see.
Plus many urban families coming out with dogs, letting them loose on the hills where there's sheep and all where there's cattle grazing. That has to be curtailed, because otherwise it's going to be catastrophic, and it'll end up being totally banned if it's not addressed. But after that, we're going to move on to what would be our next piece, which is you again, Eamon, the Sheephaven Credit Union AGM.
The AGM, they held it there last week, online again, I suppose, like on the thing. That's again their second year of having that, and that normally would be, the AGM would be quite an event that would have when they have it before live. But it was presented at the weekend there, and despite the kind of the difficulties of the last couple of years, they announced that they remained strong throughout the couple of years, and the figures were all presented by accountant Seamus Devine. Some interesting figures in there, John, as you're pointing out there, like that they have assets more than 22 million. Like that's fair, healthy, amount for that.
The financial institutions of recent years have had difficulty lending money. People are reluctant to borrow money.
Yeah.
how are they compared to other
it's
institutions?
Isn't it like the credit unions effectively they
Yeah.
have to have loans to make their money? That's how they go. It's not just a holding. There's very little in that. So that's it. I think they have something along the lines of 556 loans on the books for 2021, to the value of just over 4.2 million. Which is interesting, including 1.7 million worth of car loans. So they needed they have a couple of new loan offerings I see as well. These a green loan and different things like that. So they kind of break it down to the education people. They have it sort of in many different ways. But yeah, they weren't in a position to pay out the dividend this year, which is I think the second.
I don't
year.
think any of them were actually, but
I
anyway,
can understand that.
For a pretty rural-based credit union with 22 million of assets, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
After that, we're going to return to something more alternative, not really alternative, but
Theatrical,
but
or-
more theatrical, really.
Mhm.
And it's about a play at Greenham Theatre, Declan.
Yeah, this is a young Glenswally man his debut play is on it in Greenham this week. It's Patrick Quinn, and he is featured, and he's the man starring in the show as well. He's as well as writing the play. He is playing the part of the 5 characters in it as well.
Oh, very good.
It's called Rev, and it's about a weekend at the Donegal International Rally, and the caricature of a young man, and the story of going out on one of the nights of the weekend, and the big crowds around Letterkenny and that sort of stuff. And then he stops just at that then, because I think he doesn't want us to tell the whole story. He wants people to go.
It's an interesting premise, isn't it?
He wants
It's
people
running
to go
on this Thursday, Friday,
Saturday.
Yeah. Have we a time on that?
Yeah, 6:30, 6:30,
6:30.
and there's matinees on Thursday
Yeah,
and Friday
yeah.
at 11 o'clock as well for students, secondary school
And do
students.
we know if the theatre is back to capacity or
That I'm not sure on that one, John.
Yeah.
I'm not sure on that.
we might check that out?
Yeah, we will check
But
that out. But it's great to see Patrick. He's been in acting now for a number of years, and just graduated there in May from theatre school or acting school in Wales.
Oh, very good. And so he wrote and is starring in it. That's
Yeah.
a fair bit of work
There's
in
quite
that.
a bit of experience on the stage as well.
He has. He's been
She's
since his first year at Queen's University. Has been acting professionally. So I suppose he has 6 or 7 years under his belt at that.
Good on. Very original premise, anyway, which
Yeah.
is good.
We're going to move on to the lead story because we're beginning to run out of time. Anger as practice nurses excluded from the €1,000 bonus, and we're just reporting that Ireland's 2,000 practice nurses have reacted with anger and disbelief at being excluded from the €1,000 bonus payment. And Deputy Joe McHugh has questioned the Minister for Finance with regard to widening the parameters to include them and other sections who would have expected to have been included. So we're looking forward to see how that pans out in the dial, to see if the Minister does bend on it, because it would have come as a bit of a shock to most people who have any contact with health centres, and there are so many of them around the country. But this is a group that are pretty isolated and that they're employed privately, even though much of their work is in line with the HSE regime. But most of them don't belong to a union. Some of them were in unions, no longer see any great purpose in it, and they don't want to be sort of in any way identified with the fact that they're employed in any particular practice, because most of them enjoy good relationships with their employer, who happens to be the GP. From that point of view, that is fine and well, but the COVID issue brought their role much more into the public domain when you saw them out in car parking spaces in the rush to get vaccinations done and dusted in reasonably good afternoons, and trying to use up every last vial of inoculation. So
very much at the front line.
Very, very much at the front line, but this work all came at a fairly heavy toll on their own time.
Absolutely.
Because this was on top of all their daily workload, which is quite massive when you read through that story. But Joe McHugh has taken that by way of a private question to the Minister, and if necessary he will follow up and seeking a meeting with him. So we're going to keep an eye on that one, because many other groups like Home Helps and all that kind of thing are not included, and many of them suffer
A lot of
fairly
good
heavy
detail there
toll.
in that story.
So I don't think that has been quite well thought through at all. I think they have formed a panel to determine
Assess
what
those,
groups should or should not be included in that. But it's going to be a lot. It's going to have to be a lot wider than originally planned, I would imagine, because if when you see the practice nurses excluded from it, then it doesn't sit well with people, and it actually doesn't sit well with anyone. So let's see how that one pans out. But with that, we're going to wind it up for this evening. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.